Hi guys, this is Travis from Scroll Saw Goodies. Welcome back to another episode. We're continuing on our classroom series as we learn to use the program Inkscape to create scroll saw patterns. This is going to be lesson number 4. We're going to be talking about building complex shapes by using various additive and subtractive tools at our disposal. So let's go ahead and just jump on in, and we'll go ahead and talk about each one of these. Now, the tools that I've been talking about is actually listed under Path. We have several options here. We have a union, we have difference, we have intersection, exclusion, division, and cut path. We'll also be talking about combine and break apart real briefly, but this is really where we're going to focus in as these tools here. We'll be using these tools quite a bit when creating scroll saw patterns. It's just one of these tools that is so versatile that we'll use these almost all the time to create very unique shapes for our patterns. So let's go ahead and start off. I'm going to create a little square. I'm also going to create a circle. And let's go ahead and talk about what these do. So I'm going to select the square and I'm going to select the circle, and the very first option we have is union. And let's just go ahead and click this and see what happens. And basically what it does is it welds these two pieces together, or melts them together, so that there are one object now. And as you can see, there's the black outline that just goes around the complete contour, and it's now one object. Okay, so you can kind of start to see exactly how we could start building complicated shapes with this. I'm going to Control C this out, and I'm going to show you what you could do with union. I'm going to duplicate this little design here. Let's say we want to well, let's go ahead and move this to the side here and duplicate this, and then we'll flip it along the horizontal axis. Now we have two items, one on top of the other. So we could select both of them, come up here to Path Union, and combine these. Okay, so now they're one object. So if we duplicate that and flip it along the other axis, normally I would use align and distribute to make sure that these are sent. Let's do that. Let's use align and distribute to center these up, and they are. Come up to Path Union, and now these are one item as well. So let's go ahead and duplicate this and rotate this 90 degrees and combine these things under union, and then we could duplicate it once again, and let's rotate this 45 degrees, and now we can select both of these and once again click union, and right there we have like a little star snowflake type pattern ready for Christmas. Okay, so that is how union can be used to create scroll saw patterns. Okay, I'm going to put this to the side real quick. I might come back to that a little bit later. Let's take our example back. Let's talk about the next option. Okay, so we have, let's select our square and select our circle. Our next option is difference. So let's go ahead and click that, see what happens. Basically, the circle created like a cookie cutter and cut a notch out of the square. Okay, and this is yet another way to create a complex shape. Okay, now the way this works is whatever's on top is the cutter piece, and whatever's on bottom is the piece to be cut. So if we wanted to take a notch out of the circle, we would have to bring the cutter piece to the top. So I just select that and use object distribution tool up here. We'll raise it to the top, and now we'll select the square and the circle, go to difference, and now I took a wedge out of the circle. Okay, so where can we use this? Well, let's go ahead and put this thing to the side once again. Let's go ahead and duplicate our little pattern here, and maybe we'll be wanting to make a trivet. Okay, so we have a Let's go ahead and zoom in. There we go. So maybe we want to create a trivet. So we'll take this, we'll duplicate this, flip using our flip tools. Remember we covered all these flip tools in lesson 2, I believe. So we could create each one of these. And now we have the beginnings of a trivet. So let's go ahead, I'm going to center these up. And I'm going to center these up. Okay, so now we could select our design, select our circle, come up to path, difference. Once again, select our design, select our circle, go to difference. And as you can see, we're using the shape as a cookie cutter to basically cut out a hole into our pattern. Difference. Okay, and as you can see, we're about on a really good start for a nice trivet pattern. So that's how you can use difference. It's a way to cut a piercing hole into your pattern. Let's put that to the side. Let's grab our demonstration once again. Okay, the next option here is, what do we have? Intersection. Basically what it's going to do is the pieces that intersect will be left behind, and what isn't left behind is, well, disappears. So we could do something along those lines in order to create a nice complicated shape. Let's see where we can use something like this. Let's go ahead and duplicate our pattern here. Let's say we only want, oh, I don't know, maybe just this section of our pattern. So we could take our circle, select the 2, and we could come over here to intersection, and now we just have that little section that we originally wanted. And then we could, oh, I don't know, maybe you wanted a little finial or something like that. So you could take that, and now you have, whoops, the basics of a finial. Okay, so that's one way to use intersection, is if you wanted to cut out a little piece. So the next option is exclusion. This is the exact opposite of intersection. Where it intersects, it's going to cut out. So I'm going to click exclusion, and as you can see, where the intersection was, it cut out of the object and left everything else as one object. So we have that option. So let's go ahead and Control Z that out. Let's see where we could use something like that. So maybe, oh, I don't know. Let's say we have a little oval here, and we want, oh, let's go like this. So we duplicate that. And then let's go ahead and center all these up. So we can maybe go and do an exclusion here and an exclusion here. So it's kind of a fun way to play with positive and negative spaces. Okay. So that is an option for you there as well. Okay. Let's go back to our little example once again. And let's look at the next option. The next option is division. Now, division is very similar to difference in the fact that the object order plays a role in how it executes. Let me just show you how it works real quick. I have the square and the circle. You remember the circle is on top, so it's going to be the cutter. So I'm going to come over here to path, division. The circle disappears, but it leaves this little half circle in here. And what that big circle did is it intersected this square. So now that we have two pieces. Okay. So that's how that works. If we wanted to go the other way and use the square as the cutter instead, make sure the square is on top, come over here to division, and now we have a little pie chart. Okay? So let's see how we could use something like that. Let's move this to the side. Let's say we need to... Let's go ahead and elongate this thing. Let's say we needed a nice base for some word art. So we're going to do a nice little intersection. Let's pull that back out. So I wanted to cut it right there. So I'm going to select the two objects. Remember the cutter is on top. So I'm going to come up here to path, division. And now I have two separate pieces. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and let's go ahead and grab our square, and now we could more or less extend this out so that we have a really nice base for some word art. Okay, and then in combination with our path union, here, let's nudge this over a little bit. With union, you can see how that could be rather handy. Okay. Okay, let's bring back our example once again, and let's talk about the very last one. The very last one is cut path. Okay, so basically we want to cut path, and basically what it does is it used the cookie cutter. Like I told you, the very top object is going to be your cutter, and the bottom object is what's going to be cut. So I'm going to come up here to path, cut path, and it looks like the circle disappeared. But very similar to division, what it's doing is it took the path and cut the path, not the actual fill. Remember, the path is also considered the stroke or the outline. So if I click this corner, I could pull out the path. So basically, I created two pieces of line art by using the intersection. Okay, so let's go ahead and Control Z that out. Let's say we want the square to cookie cut out of the circle. We could do that too. Path, cut path, and now we have a little arc and a larger arc. Okay, so why would we want to use something like that? So let's say we have a little design that we want to put in this square here. We want to do a little bit of veining. Okay, but if we do any veining with this, if we cut the outline of this, this piece is only going to fall through. So what we could do is grab the circle, and we'll cut this path. So select those two, cut path, and now we have this path cut into two pieces, and now we could create a little bit of a space so that when you do the veining for this outline, it's not going to fall out because you have this little bridge across. So that is one way to use a cut path. Okay, the next part we're going to be talking about is break apart and combine. They're underneath this entire section that we have been discussing. There's combine and break apart. Now combine kind of acts similar to grouping, and it's somewhat similar to union. but they operate in much different ways. And basically, break apart is the exact opposite of combine. So let's go ahead and talk about combine first. Like I mentioned before, combine kind of works like grouping, because it creates one object out of multiple objects. So I could take both of these objects here, and I could come up here to path, combine, and as you can see, both objects kind of melted into one another and merged. And you also kind of notice that these lines also become part of the pattern. What's interesting about combine, this is going to play a lot bigger role when we get into node editing, but all of these nodes are now able to be edited. And let me just show you this real quick. I'm not going to explain what I'm doing, but just know that if I wanted to edit this thing as it has been combined, I could come in here and I could change all of these nodes. Okay, so I could edit these as if it was one object. Now I'm going to Control Z this out and show you how it differs from editing from grouping. So I'm going to Control Z that out, and if we group this, so we kind of come up here to group, now I could treat it as one object and scale it and whatnot, but I can't really go in here and edit. I could edit the pieces individually, but I can't edit it together as if it was one object, and that's really where combine becomes so powerful. So know that that is there, and we'll also be using this when we work with text. So let's go ahead and combine these two objects once again. And now we have a combine. Like I said before, break apart is the exact opposite of combine. So if we break this apart, now we have our two individual objects. So if you have multiple elements put together into one, you could break them apart, manipulate the individual shapes independently of the other ones, and then you can combine them together once again, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. But so let's say we take both of these items here, and we'll go ahead and combine them once again. And like I mentioned before, we could now edit all of these nodes. Now if I could come in here and I could just kind of change the shape a little bit, and then these are combined objects, we could also come up here to break apart, and now we have these separate shapes. So break apart will kind of work that way. How can we use this? Let's go ahead and put this to the side. Let's go back to our little snowflake design here, and we have a lot of these really tiny little holes in there, and you know, that's not really all that practical for scroll sawing. So these little nibs like right in here, maybe some of these radial spokes, we probably need to remove. We could go into node editing and remove each one of the nodes, but it would be easier if we just take this snowflake, come up to path, and we'll break it apart. So now we have all of our pieces separate. You know, they're all separate shapes now. Let's Control Z that out, and now I could kind of come in here and I could just select each one of these little pieces, and I could just hit the delete key, and I could go through and I could just edit each one of these little pieces so that they are no longer needed. And once I have everything just kind of removed the way I want them, let's go ahead and zoom out. Once I have everything removed, I could select everything once again and come up to path, combine, and we're left with the edited pattern. So that's one way to use this. Combine and break apart, it's a little complicated. There are other ways of doing the same thing. just know that that option is there. It might take a little bit of playing with and kind of thinking outside the box when using those type of tools, but I just wanted to show you that, mostly because when we start playing around with lettering and text, which I believe is lesson 6, you'll be using break apart and combine a fair amount just to so you can manipulate letters, and we'll show you a little bit more about that in lesson 6. So that's what we have for creating complex designs. As you can see, these are very powerful items. These offer a lot of shortcuts, so you can get to the pattern design quickly and efficiently and get these really interesting shapes. So that's it for now. I hope you learned a few things, and stay tuned next week when we pick up where we left off. I hope you enjoyed this installment of our continuing classroom series on how to use Inkscape to create scroll saw patterns. You can find this lesson and others over at scrollsawvillage.com in the Village University forum. There you'll find videos, written instruction, downloadable source material, and of course classroom discussion where you could have all your questions answered. This video series is produced by Scroll Saw Goodies in association with Scroll Saw Village. Be sure to stop by and say hi, and until next time, happy scrolling.